He said yes. He said his flight was scheduled to have him there Monday.
So his intention was to be at the mandatory camp. That's via text message. He said he would be here.
Yes, he did.
So is this just Chip Kelly trying to say, hey, I'm the boss and you weren't here when I needed you here and you're out? I mean, what do you read into why Mathis is not here now?
You mean like the timing of why he's not here?
Yeah, I mean today, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all of a sudden, you know what? I think I feel like cutting Evan Mathis today.
Well, I mean, I think three things come to mind. One, we just have recent reports, including my own, that there was an offer on the table from the previous regime, Howie Roseman's regime, that Evan had turned down, and all of a sudden the new regime decided to pull it, which didn't really put the new regime in a favorable light. The second thing is mini camps have just ended. The voluntary mini camps have just ended. If you were going to cut a player in the middle of mini camp, voluntary mini camp, I imagine you could be vulnerable to an NFLPA grievance about discarding a player for missing camps that he doesn't, by contract, have to be attending at. And the third part of that is, again, with mini camps, the coaching staff has now had a couple of weeks to look at these guys who are backups, the Tobins, the Andrew Gardners, the rookie free agents, Alan Barbary, and see how they've developed over the offseason and make that decision of whether or not they feel they're in good shape to move on. So, you put all those three factors together, and Evan's gone. And I'm sure if you went back and, pull up all the audios of our interviews in the last month or two and you asking me about the situation, I'm pretty sure I told you every single time I thought that Evan Mathis was 80% gone, and it was just a matter of time before it happened. So that part of it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and you're right about that. You've been pretty steadfast on that. He was not coming back, and obviously he's considered one of the best guards in the league. I think he was going to be one of the oldest, if not the oldest guard in the league, $5.5 million. The combination of age and salary, did that do him in, or is it the thought that if you don't want to comply with me, you won't be here? That's what a lot of people think, obviously.
Yeah, I don't think age and salary has anything to do with this. I think if Evan Mathis had never asked for more money, he'd be on the team. So, I mean, he's been asking for more money for 2 years and still somehow made it to this point. So I think this is just a case of, you keep asking, you're not showing up and being the soldier at the camps and the off-season program. Now there's reports leaking about what was offered and what wasn't offered. This is it. You're done, and that's where it's at. He's not the oldest guard in football. I don't think that's accurate. I could be wrong, but
I think it was that he's the oldest starting guard.
I have to go look and see what Ben Grubbs is at. Maybe he is, but it's not by a whole lot. But Evan's among the, I think, 4 highest paid guards in football based on base salary this year. But if you look at contracts that include bonus money and attach that, amortized bonus money from year to year, if you take into account total cash, he's not among the top 10. There are guys like Andy Levitre, who's never made a Pro Bowl, making more because of bonus money, and Ben Grubbs, I believe, also making more, who's only made 1 Pro Bowl in the past 3 years. So this is, I would assume, Evan's contention that, you can say he's the top 4 highest paid guy, but that's only based on this year's salary, not the total bonus money that comes with a contract. And we all know that bonus money is a big, significant part of a contract.
If I asked you, Geoff, the relationship between Kelly and Mathis in the past, is there a relationship? Is it a poor relationship? Would you say this is a surprise because they had a great relationship? How would you describe their, relationship?
I once asked Evan a while back, what his relationship was like with Chip or where he felt he stands with the organization, based on asking for this contract and the trades and everything. And, the response was something like, I don't know. The coaches never say anything to me. And, that's not an Evan Mathis thing. That's kind of a response that I've heard from a lot of players when I've asked them where they felt they stood with the organization. So I think he's just like everybody else. Nobody – there's not one guy who's really on that team, at least on the roster, who could say that they're part of Chip Kelly's inner circle, because I don't think that inner circle exists. There's Chip Kelly, and there's those who are close to him who are always trying to figure him out.
So when you hear Cary Williams' comments from yesterday, now I know a lot of people would say Cary Williams stunk, who cares? Take it objectively. Do you put some stock into some of the things he said?
A little bit, because Cary Williams can't be considered, what he said can't be considered sour grapes, because sour grapes comes from like a jilted lover, right? Sour grapes comes when somebody all of a sudden changes their tune when they're discarded. Cary Williams has been ripping Chip Kelly since he's been an Eagle. I mean, not just about practice, but about a lot of things, including, going up against the Patriots and joint practices. So he's been a guy who's always been questioning and not, questioning the program, not always on board with everything, especially how their corrections day, their practice tempo. I thought the team was tired a little bit last year, Mike, but I don't think it's because of what Cary Williams said, the way they practice. I think it's because they had a lot of backups in key positions. They had lost Nick Foles. They had lost D'Amico. Inside linebacker, obviously, Kendricks had missed time. They were playing Casey Matthews and Emmanuel Acho out there at times. Obviously, the offensive line was beat up. Whenever you're down to guy number 3 and 4 on the depth chart, you're not going to be the same team that you were. So it's unfair to say that the way they practice and the conditioning was the reason, because I remember 2 years ago, the Eagles won 7 out of their last 8 games after starting off 3-5, and almost everybody was telling you in December that the reason why they were winning games was because they were healthier and fresher than all the teams that they were playing. So you can't say that one year, and then the next year it's because their practice is making them tired.
No, fair point. Geoff Mosher is with us, CSNPhilly.com. And, Jeff, we do appreciate you jumping on really quick notice. This obviously happened pretty fast. And, obviously, Mathis, is an offensive lineman. Harriman's gone. So 2 guys that are offensive linemen have been here for a while. And the narrative that a lot of the Reed guys are gone. I guess Kelsey's the one guy that's still remaining. Peters is still here. But McCoy gone, Jackson gone, Macklin gone. Not a lot in return for some, productive players. So what is that a problem? Do you look at that and say, look, I understand if you don't see eye to eye with these guys, but you didn't get a whole heck of a lot in return if you wanted to change the culture.
Yeah, I just wrote a column that's going to go up on CSNPhilly.com in a few minutes, kind of about what you're asking. And this is to me, this is a little bit of an uglier divorce than the Deshaun Jackson one, because I don't see a winner in this divorce. I don't know that Evan Mathis is going to get what he's looking for financially. And if he does, I don't know if it's going to put him on a team that is on the upswing and has a chance to make it to the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Sometimes the teams with the most money are the teams like the Jaguars last year and the Raiders. They have the most money because they have the least amount of prominent players they have to pay. And with Chip Kelly, he released Deshaun Jackson, but he had Jeremy Macklin coming back. Now, he probably didn't know, couldn't for sure say that Macklin was going to be healthy, but he knew the kind of caliber player that Macklin was, and sure turned out that Macklin filled that role. Traded LaShawn McCoy, but brought in DeMarco Murray, who led the NFL in rushing last year. He doesn't have a guy of Evan Mathis' caliber right now to come in and play. Now, maybe Matt Tobin or Alan Barbary surprises us all. Maybe they're fine, but I think he's gambling in this situation, especially when he went 2 drafts without picking an offensive lineman, and really way more draft picks if you go back to his first draft with taking that Lane Johnson first and then nobody else after that. So it's hard to see a clear winner here. It's a calculated risk on both guys' part.
Yeah, that's a good point in that what do they do now? I mean, I know there was a report out there, I guess Ruben over at CSN Philly with you guys said that the kid Chester, I guess the guy Chester, he's not a kid anymore, got a 2-year offer. He thought this wasn't a good spot for a chance to play, so he took a 1-year deal. But that's an indication that maybe they thought they needed some sort of competition or veteran help. Is that something that they're going to have to do now, find a guy that gets cut?
Well, I don't know. I think one of the reasons that they waited, again, till this point was to get a full evaluation on everybody that they brought in to the spring camps. And although the pads aren't out, they have an idea. And again, I think they had moved on past him anyway. I think they were giving him a shot to make amends, to come back, to give up the demands of wanting more money and participate and get on board.
Why not then wait to see if he shows up? And if he doesn't, then say, all right, the guy didn't show up. Because then I think the fans, not that they care what the fans do, but all right, he didn't show up. Well, then screw him. He doesn't want to be an Eagle. We believe in it. Now you cut the guy who says he wants to be there and was going to, or maybe doesn't want to, but was going to show up. Doesn't that make the team look worse?
Well, it does a little bit, but to be honest with you, the team had moved on too, and I've never seen a situation like this before, but I wrote the story about Zach Ertz and Jason Peters pretty much saying bye-bye. I haven't, usually when there's contract disputes, players don't take the ownership side. They either stay diplomatic and don't take anyone's side or back the player. Never seen guys just say, listen, we got something going on here. This guy's not on board. It was going to be really strange, if you think about it, if Evan Mathis showed up, because it became more about Evan versus Chip, right? I mean, it became about Evan now versus Jason Peters, Evan now versus Ertz, Evan now versus a locker room that didn't really seem to roll out the red carpet on a two-time Pro Bowl guard coming back.
I'm interested. You just mentioned Peters, and I was wondering before, do you think Peters and anybody now is siding with the team just because, hey, if I say that I'm supporting a player, I could be the next guy gone?
I think that's possible, but I don't think that's 100% the reason why those guys said that. They could have just stayed diplomatic and not said anything at all. A lot of guys could just say, listen, that's between them and Chip, and I'm not getting into it, and you can't get released for saying something like that. I don't think Chip is that nutty. These guys went out of their way, especially Jason Peters, to say, Jason Peters, Mike, think about this. Jason Peters said, if Evan Mathis shows up next week, I'm not even sure he's ahead of Alan Barbary on the depth chart. If that doesn't smack you right across the face.
or though, is that him saying, look, Barbary's been here. He deserves to be number one on the depth chart unless Mathis beats him out in camp.
Right, but even if that's the insinuation, that's an amazing insinuation when you talk about one guy being a two-time Pro Bowl guard. And let's face it, these Pro Bowls didn't come 8 years ago like some other guys who were two-time Pro Bowlers. These are the last 2 years compared to Alan Barbary, who started 9 career games and just won last year. So, I thought that was a very telltale statement. And another thing that Zach Ertz said that was telltale was, he said something to the effect that we are building a program and a culture here where everybody shows up to work and have the same goal. He didn't say Chip Kelly is building a program. He said we. So he spoke for the team when he basically, threw Evan Mathis under the bus there with that comment. So I thought that was really telltale and kind of goes to show you how this all came to a head and why today is the day that Evan Mathis is not an Eagle anymore.
Geoff Mosher, CSN Philly. Is any of this a continuation of Chip Kelly saying, hey, Howie Roseman, this is what you did and this is what I'm doing to fix it?
You can certainly lump it in there because it is yet another Howie Roseman, Andy Reid guy who's being jettisoned. So that's part of it. Well, honestly, if Evan Mathis was a good soldier and showed up and played this year, it might have been his last year anyway.
Yeah. Well, I can say this. I could say working with Evan, I've hosted shows with him. It could be one of the nicest, kind of a strange dude, but one of the nicest guys I've ever dealt with in my life. He is a little, very dry sense of humor, but, he could be a tough guy to read, I guess, if you're trying to say, hey, are you on board with us? Yeah, sure, Coach, I'm on board. He's just a dry dude.
Right. No doubt. It's, I've always enjoyed my interactions with Evan. I consider him a good guy. I've never had a problem with him. He's always been honest with me, but he's mercurial as well as Chip. Honestly, you can almost understand how this came to be. These are two guys who are a little bit hard-headed and a little bit difficult to pin down and daring each other to blink first.
In the end, if it has to do with Howie, and I know this question comes up a lot, but as you're seeing this offseason and things emerge, can Howie Roseman and Chip Kelly coexist in the same organization long term?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. It's really about Howie. And does Howie want to work, 10 to 3 now and collect a really, really nice paycheck for the rest of his life? Most people would say yes. Most people would probably take that opportunity and say, yeah, I just got kicked in the pants and publicly humiliated, but I'm making a lot more money. I'm doing a lot less work. I'm all right with that. The one thing about Howie is that he has worked his life to get to where he was. He's made a lot of money, but he is a prideful guy. He kind of fashioned himself as the next Ron Wolf, an executive who was going to lead an organization to Super Bowls without ever having played the game. And this has got to be so damaging to his ego. And it gets worse and worse by the day. As I mentioned, they brought in that guy, Chris Shea, in the front office who has done contracts and almost now becomes another buffer between Chip and Ed and between them, those two and Howie. How much more can he kind of have his ego shredded by this front office and just sit there and collect a paycheck, I don't know. I really don't know how much longer he'll do it.
Geoff Mosher, CSN Philly. I know this is something that just kind of unfolded kind of last minute, so we do thank you for jumping on board and giving us some good insight as you text it with Evan Mathis. He said he planned on being there. Well, now he's looking for a new job. Geoff, thanks, bud.
You got it, Mike.